Snakes, unchanged for millennia, are some of the most enigmatic and enchanting animals on the entire planet. Since the dawn of time, snakes have fostered our fascination, playing a significant role in our most ancient stories, often as malevolent characters.
This ancient temple here in Penang, Malaysia, was actually built in honour of a monk who had a very special relationship with snakes like this. Legend has it that soon after the temple was erected, the snakes slithered in and set up residence here in the temple. And this is just one example of the very complex relationship that humankind has with snakes, which are both feared and revered the world over.
Once, only those with access to the supernatural were able to control these potentially deadly creatures. However, advances in modern animal husbandry have since allowed us to indulge in our fascination of these highly symbolic animals. And with that has come a global explosion in the use of snakes as pets. Traded in their millions and bred without restriction, all to feed our demand for the exotic and the unusual. My name is Aaron Gekoski. I'm an environmental photojournalist who has spent the past decade documenting our often uncomfortable relationship with the natural world. Now, I'm embarking on an investigation into the exotic pet trade, following the story wherever it takes me. With the support of World Animal Protection, I will be entering the formerly forbidden world of the snake handler. Crossing continents, I'm on a mission to explore our ancient bond with serpents and trace the source of one of the world's most popular pet snakes, the ball python. I will witness sacred rituals and join expeditions into the wild, all in an attempt to uncover the truth about pythons and the exotic pet trade. My journey starts in the United States of America. For decades, America has been the international trendsetter for music and popular culture. However, over the past 30 years, the US has also led the way in another industry, the exotic pet trade.
I've just arrived into the famous city of Memphis in Tennessee, gateway to America's deep south, and hopefully my entry point into the world of pet pythons.
Driven by a perpetual desire for the weird and wonderful, recent estimates suggest that more than 17 million exotic pets are currently inhabiting American households, with one group of animals making up more than half the total. Reptiles. To see this fascination for myself, I headed to one of the many regional reptile expos occurring regularly across the country's southern states.
This is quite a bizarre experience. It's almost like being in a supermarket for reptiles. So there's just row upon row of shelves or boxes or tubs filled with exotic animals.
Amongst all this bewildering variety, one particular species appeared more popular than any other: the ball python. But I wanted to find out what it was that made them so desirable.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, that is beautiful. And do they like being handled? Yeah? You don't worry about getting bitten?
Out of over 50 that I have, I've been bit by one. She's been bit by one. And my 8-year-old daughter will reach in and pull them. She won't fight to play with them.
So why do you think people are so scared of them?
The way that you're brought up.
How did you get into it?
Really, to be honest with you, back years ago, my little brother came to this show, and he was looking at snakes, and he was looking at getting into breeding snakes. And I was like, well, I've kind of always wanted a snake. And he gave me a couple different ones, you know, and that's where it began. And then my obsession for them just grew.
There was no doubt that the vendors and buyers alike truly admired the pythons. But I couldn't help the feeling the snakes were sort of a living collector's item.
So why is that one so much more expensive than these ones?
Because it's got 2 more genes in it. This is just a single gene here, to where this has got 3 genes stacked on it. This is 2 genes, and I mean, the color and the brightness and the prettiness of it, I mean, the customers in the market, basically, you know, it's decided by them as what they want and what's going to be popular and worth money.
The more colourful, the more they're worth.
More or less, yeah, if they've been in the market the same amount of time. Like if it's something that's brand new, you might be talking 20, 25K. And
For a single snake?
Yeah.
And people will pay that?
Oh yeah, there's been, like the bananas, I think the first banana sold for 50K.
With such sums involved, it's no wonder a booming business of breeders has grown up around this species. But in the pursuit of profit, what sort of standards were the breeders holding themselves to?
Does it worry you or play on your mind, so when you sell a snake that you've spent so long raising, that someone is going to take care of it the way that you've taken care of it?
I try my best to make sure that they're going to good home. At the end of the day, it's about the animals.
So the animal welfare is of huge importance to you?
To me it is. I can't say as a whole it's like that, but to me it is.
Do you think to some breeders it's not as important?
No. You can go around and tell who cares more or doesn't care. A lot of times you can tell, like it's visible. The animals just don't look great. They don't look like they've been taken good care of. So it's visible though. You can see it.
With animal welfare issues at stake, World Animal Protection have taken on the task of investigating any potential concerns. And for Global Head of Campaigns, Cassandra Conan, it's not only about welfare, but also origin.
So do you breed all these as well, or?
I bred everything that's on this table, except
wow.
this one is my new baby.
This one here?
Yes, but everything else here, or was here, I was bred at my house.
Yeah.
Hatched at my house.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think a lot of it is breeders, people that are importing things, that they're getting it from the wild.
Where were they from?
They originally come from Africa. Everything comes from Africa.
With their docile nature, small size and beautiful patterning, it's no wonder ball pythons are possibly the world's most popular pet snake. But I had to know, behind the glamorous front of the expo, what was going on behind the scenes. Where exactly were all of these animals coming from? Later on, I arranged to meet up with Cassandra in the hope that she might have some answers.
What was so fascinating was just how many different types of colours and patternings there were, and that was all from one species, just ball pythons.
I think what always overwhelms me when I see situations like this and I see these animals is that it's hard to recognize that these animals are being treated like a commodity in the same way that you would see them filled with like gummy bears or jujubes in a grocery store. They're the same containers, they're the exact same containers. And when they're displayed in the way that we saw them, these animals are really just being treated as product instead of sentient beings. As we were going booth to booth, we were seeing the many, many different colors and patterns and designs to these animals. And really what's happened is part of this industry is this desire to have the most unique, the most interesting animal that has created this cottage industry where they are, changing the genetics of these animals and breeding them to get unique colors, unique designs. And one of the things we don't know is the repercussions of what could be happening to these animals as a result of this. The other thing that we believe is that wild snakes are part of the breeding process. So they may not have been for sale yesterday when we were observing them, but it is entirely possible that the wild-caught snakes were part of that breeding process at some point.
In the United States, the use of wild-caught imported snakes in the pet python trade is nothing new. A quick look online reveals the true scale of an industry that's been steadily growing for the last 40 years. Currently, there are thousands of online postings across the country, totaling millions of dollars in potential sales. But importing any exotic animals into the country can be risky business, and pythons are no different.
Just when you thought you've seen it all in Central Florida, we bring you this. Half a dozen Florida Fish and Wildlife officers wrestling with a huge, enormous python.
It sounds like a bad horror movie. Snakes are eating Florida.
Biologists theorize that somebody imported a Burmese python from Southeast Asia as a pet, but then it got too big, so they decided to release it out in the Everglades. Well, the eggs hatched, and now there's an estimated 100,000 snakes out here.
Wildlife biologists are concerned they'll devour pets and endangered species, or worse, menace small children. The only way to stop their spread, catch them and kill them.
The US python problem has gone on so long and grown so large that python hunting has even become a profession. And I was off to meet one of the biggest characters in the business. Crossing state lines, I headed to Florida and the Everglades, home of the wild man. To encourage more people to take up the cause of python extraction, the authorities have placed a bounty on the invasive snakes. The hunters receive $50 for the first 4 feet of snake and an extra $25 for every subsequent foot of python brought in alive.
So Dusty, out on python patrol then. Is this the plan then? We just drive along at this speed and then look out with searchlights?
We're on cruise control, and the snakes are coming out of the water. They'll start running along the bank. They're gonna wanna eat something, and we're gonna try to interrupt their dinner. You know, you don't really see their eyes shining or anything like that. It's a lot of cover for them too, and they get under there and hide, and you'll never see them. You can walk right past them. Their pattern is such camouflage. You know, they can blend their masters of disguise, and they lay so still, like they think you don't even see them.
And then, when we actually see one, like what's the process after that?
I want to try to get the head as fast as I can and get it under control, because it's no fun getting dragged into that swamp. It's wrestling a 16-foot snake in the water, you know. It can get a little dangerous.
How many times have you been bitten?
I probably can't count.
That's new.
Yeah, that was a couple days ago. Their teeth will break off in your hand, and they'll pop out like splinters eventually. It's like playing with fire. You're gonna get this part of the job, you know. I'm not worried about it.
Despite the obvious occupational hazards, the wild man's motivation and passion for the protection of his native environment were evident.
I grew up in South Florida, and it was paradise as a kid. You know, we could play in the woods. We didn't have video games and stuff like that, and cell phones, and we were outside, and you know, all day, all night long, and it was our playground. And I really appreciate nature and the earth and the Everglades, and I want it to be here for future generations.
Have you noticed a major change then in terms of the environment?
Well, when I first saw, you know, the destruction in the Everglades, it just broke my heart, and immediately it just lit a fire in me, and I had to do what I could do. First of all, it's just a total destruction of our native wildlife. There's no raccoons, the otters, you know, you don't see that stuff anymore. And now that those mammals have been eliminated, the snakes are targeting alligators. Our bird population is taking a toll, and it's It takes food out of the environment for panthers, other predators, and it's just disrupting the whole food chain.
So where are all of these pythons actually coming from?
The pythons originated through the pet trade. You know, people brought them to this country, and then there's been releases, and Hurricane Andrew demolished a reptile facility. There was 900 babies that we know for a fact that were blown into the Everglades. And you put that many snakes in a small area, they'll find themselves reproduce. And 7 years later, it's kind of like a nightmare, man. And we got a big problem on our hands.
But was this problem that he and other hunters faced limited only to this one species of snake?
What are the main different python species that you're finding out here?
It's mainly the Burmese. You know, down south, there's a small population, a breeding population of African rock pythons. And it's kind of scary because they're a little bit more, they are more aggressive than the Burmese, and they get big. So there's actually been some rainbow boas found lately, which I think that's crazy. And there's been a couple anacondas caught, but not in recent years. Green anacondas, a couple reticulated pythons.
Do you ever get any criticism from people?
Yeah, you hear all that stuff. Oh, I hope that snake chokes you to death, you dumb redneck or dumb hick. And it's like, well, you're the one that's ignorant, not me, buddy. So.
Despite the sheer number of pythons slithering around the Everglades, a successful hunt is never guaranteed, especially during the dark of night. So if you get a chance, you have to take it.
Whoa, 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 stop. It's right there. See it? Oh. Yeah.
Has he got it?
It's about 4 foot. This might be this year's model, though. Woo, son. It's a biter, baby.
Not quite the 16-foot monster I was anticipating, but removing a juvenile snake like this still makes a massive difference to the fragile Everglades ecosystem.
It's good to get them this young because you stop them before they do a lot of more damage.
With the night drawing on and dawn close to breaking, down the track we came upon a python of monstrous proportions.
Also, it was quite poignant to see the small snake that Dusty managed to catch, because if you get it at this age, it means that you catch them before they manage to do damage to the ecosystem. But now seeing this massive snake behind me that the guys caught, it's no wonder that the Everglades is suffering. And all because people decided they wanted to keep pythons as exotic pets.
Despite the skill and determination required to catch a python, for Dusty, the hunt itself is not the most difficult part of the operation.
I've never really been a hunter, a killer, but this is an environmental hunt. This is a necessary hunt. When I think about the snakes, yeah, it breaks my heart to have to kill them. They're beautiful creatures. They're doing just as what God intended them to do. I don't blame them, for trying to survive. I respect them for that. It's really not their fault. I don't want to have to play God and choose who lives and who dies, but I think of all the hundreds and hundreds of native animals that might have a fighting chance.
Dusty had shown me some of the damage our desire to keep exotic pets was having here in the United States, but I wondered exactly how widespread was the trade in pet pythons. Could this industry stretch around the world? In a bid for answers, I reached out to a trusted contact 5,000 miles away in Europe, Czech exotic pet veterinarian and reptile expert, Professor Sid Knotek. With decades of experience treating sick and injured exotic pets, I hoped he may have some inside information he'd be willing to share with me. It was time to leave the USA and take this investigation international.
That looks painful.
Yeah, it's very painful. The old skin have to go out and must be new skin, which takes weeks, sometimes even months.
How did this snake sustain these injuries, do you think?
It received the injuries from sitting on the stone, maybe a long time, and they received the burns of the belly.
Why do you think that people generally don't think that snakes are sentient beings that have feelings or that feel pain?
They don't produce any typical voice of pain. So we have to be very careful that many equipment in terrarium must be done that they will not receive any pain inside.
So those are some of the problems then that snakes suffer from physically. But what about mentally? Do snakes, for example, get depressed?
If they are depressed, they don't express, even if they suffer mentally. Sometimes we only see the snake is not eating, but it's maximum that we know from the snake that the snake is not in good condition.
It seems like you see quite a lot of ball pythons, yeah?
Yeah, snakes. From snakes, ball pythons are one of the most common species that is kept in captivity.
So where are they all coming from?
It changed because in history they were mainly really from nature. At first was the completely illegal market that was smuggled. And now many of these ball pythons, especially these different color forms, are from captive for farming, for breeders.
How do you think a snake's quality of life differs from captivity to living in the wild?
Normal population of people know almost nothing about the snakes. They only know that they are carnivores, they are eating rats or mice, and they need temperature. This is maximum knowledge that we unfortunately still have.
People aren't providing them with basic animal welfare.
Yes, and people still don't think that they are sensitive and they suffer from bad conditions. This is very common, unfortunately.
Over the years, Professor Knotek has treated thousands of exotic animals and has also seen some of the conditions they're kept and bred in.
It's maybe 40 or 50 cages, and in all of them can be 2 or 3 snakes. With more than 120 snakes in so small place. This can be hardly 2 meters. They cleaned only once a week, 1 and 2 weeks. And then you can imagine how big rubbish can be in the floor. Urine, blood, feces, everything is there. It makes also dermatitis on the skin and respiratory infections in the snakes.
Is this just purely about money?
Yeah, this is theoretically very sophisticated system how to make, like in factory, produce. It's a lot of variant of the color, a lot of different type of snakes. But it's nothing about the welfare, nothing about to keep the snake happy, to keep him normal nature.
This was the sort of access I was hoping for. Now, if only we could get inside a breeding facility, perhaps we could find out exactly where the pythons were coming from.
Sid has managed to make contact with a bull python owner here in Benin. So we are on our way there now. I have no idea what to expect.
Entering the cramped apartment, we were met with snakes stacked in boxes from the floor to the ceiling.
Certainly no expert in this area, but I don't think it's too much to say that these snakes definitely don't have enough room. So what compels someone from Brno in the Czech Republic to want to breed exotic snakes?
Říkám, začal to na základní škole vlastně. A vlastně to byla taková spíš jako, že abych byl cool v podstatě nebo něco, tak jsem si pořídil hada. Že třeba spolužáci měli s sklípkami nebo něco podobného. No.
How much can you sell some of these different color morphs for?
Jakože na třeba nejvyšší pevná cena není prostě u těch barev. Kolik se cena může vyšplhat, to jakože někdo netuší, takový prostě dá v podstatě tu cenu.
And where do you actually get these snakes from?
Ty první původní, co mám, tak jsou z importu vlastně, takže Afrika.
Whilst it did seem like the snake's basic needs were being taken care of there, you have to ask yourself, what kind of a life do these animals have living in that apartment? And also, who's to say who these snakes are actually being sold to? They could end up in anyone's hands, people who know absolutely nothing about keeping snakes as pets. And what was really interesting is what he said there right at the very end. It looks to me like all roads lead to Africa.
Benin, one of the few countries on Earth where wild ball pythons can be found. Here, pythons are afforded a special spiritual status, revered as deities in ancient folklore. Perhaps by understanding this connection between people and pythons, I'd be able to unlock some of the secrets of the snake trade.
I've got no idea what is exactly happening here. I've never seen anything quite like this.
Once a year, devotees from around the region descend on the town of Ouida for an almighty celebration, the festival of voodoo. The largest religion in the region, voodoo or voodoo, is based on a reverence for Mother Nature and a respect for the intrinsic links human beings share with the natural world. One way of connecting with the divine is through the use of animals.
Oh my word, look at, that's cat head, tortoise, snakes, big rodents. There's so many different species just in one tiny little area.
It was a crazy array of animal parts, but where were the pythons? I was about to find out.
Temple of the Pythons. That is where it looks like they're all headed to now. Not sure if we're going to be allowed in. Should we give it a go? Right, let's have a go.
However, with the festivities in full swing, gaining access inside the temple proved impossible. With the dust from the celebrations settling, the following day I returned to the Python Temple to dig deeper into the mythology surrounding these spiritual animals.
So what's the history of this temple?
Le python est principalement vénéré à Ouida et un peu partout aussi dans le Bénin, parce que c'est un serpent protecteur. C'est l'animal de la clairvoyance. C'est l'animal qui a ouvert les yeux à l'homme. Les gens, ici, le temple des pythons, c'est comme une église, un temple vaudou, où les gens viennent se ressourcer, les gens viennent prier, les gens viennent chercher des bénédictions.
And where did all the pythons come from?
Ici, c'était une grande forêt. Ouida, c'était de la forêt, c'était de la brousse. Le python habitait ici depuis toujours. Le python vit avec la population. La population vit avec le python. C'est naturel. La plus grande partie des pythons, c'est dans les maisons chez les gens. Et quand les gens les trouvent chez eux, ils sont contents parce qu'ils se disent que c'est la divinité qui vient rendre visite. Pour eux, c'est une purification.
I would like to show you some pictures now on my phone, if that's okay. These images were taken at a reptile expo in America, and this is how people are selling pythons and taking care of them.
Là, c'est ce que je peux dire, c'est que la divinité n'est pas dans son état naturel. Là, on le met dans des vivariums, on le met dans des choses, c'est pas naturel. Or, ici, sa vie naturellement, on s'occupe de lui parce que c'est la divinité devient beaucoup. C'est bien pour nous. Mais nous, on ne vend pas les pitons. Jamais. Le piton, pour nous, c'est sacré, c'est notre divinité. On ne vend pas. Et quand on a beaucoup de pitons, ça veut dire que ça se perpétue. C'est une bonne chose pour la population. Et jamais on ne vend le piton.
So you're saying that the pythons here are revered, they're sacred animals, but does everyone in Benin and everyone throughout West Africa, do they all feel the same way?
Vous savez, un peu chez nous, le python est vénéré chez nous. Mais ailleurs, par exemple, ceux qui ne vénèrent pas le python, ils peuvent le faire du mal. Dans les marchés, on sait très bien que les gens font des trafics et ils vendent des pythons. Mais ils savent très bien qu'ils couvrent un grand risque parce que c'est une divinité.
Not too sure what to make of all of that. On the one hand, he was saying that these are very sacred animals, and he was clearly quite shocked when I showed him some of the imagery from America. On the other hand, I'm not sure that that is how I would treat a sacred animal by keeping them in this big concrete temple all day. However, it seems that not everyone in Benin looks at pythons as being sacred in the way that he does. So maybe that's my next stop then, to the voodoo markets.
Heeding the python priest's words, I headed to a large market on the edge of town to investigate if pythons were being bought or sold there. Nothing could prepare me for what I was about to find.
Oh my soul. I have never seen anything like this. We've got baboon head, catfish, dog, crocodile. Oh my word, that is a bucket of monkey heads there.
No animals seem to be off limits, all dried and on sale for use in voodoo practices.
Just about every type of animal you can possibly imagine. We've even got live animals here, tortoises.
Wild animal markets, dead or alive like this one, are a potential source of dangerous diseases, which under certain circumstances could make the jump to human beings.
I was just having a chat with our fixer, Fred, and he's been speaking to one of the sellers here. And apparently the gentlemen here don't actually go out into the wild to collect the animals. They're just kind of the middlemen that sell them here on this rooftop. Not sure at the moment what the link is to the pet trade, unless the people who are going out and actually collecting the animals somehow are then selling the animals into the exotic pet trade as well. At the moment, I'm not too sure.
Inevitably, our presence and cameras started to cause some problems. But just as we were on our way out, we came across a shocking sight.
And here we have an entire tray of ball python heads. Perhaps these animals aren't quite as revered here as I thought they were.
Nothing in Africa seemed to make sense. Between the snake's apparent sacred status at the temple and the discovery of dried python heads at the market, I couldn't see how any of these animals were making it out of here alive. Staying in Benin, how close was I really from finding the source of the pythons entering the international pet trade? Soon it became clear I was in fact closer than I had first thought. According to World Animal Protection research, of all the ball pythons traded internationally, the vast majority of them come from only 3 countries in Africa. And the largest exporter, nearby Ghana. Arriving into Accra, I went to meet up with Edith Kabasimi, also of World Animal Protection. Having worked on wildlife issues in the region for several decades, Perhaps she could shed some light on the python trade networks.
Over the last 40 years, we are talking of over 3 million ball pythons having been exported from West Africa to the rest of the world. A majority of these go to the US. And if you look at the CITES database, ball pythons are the single most traded live animals from Africa.
So how are the snakes making it out of Africa and then all over the world and in such large numbers?
In order to export these sorts of numbers and consistently, you've got to be very organized. So what happens is that there are several ball python farms. Hunters or collectors go out in the wild and collect pregnant female pythons and bring them to the ranches. They keep them until they lay the eggs, and then the eggs hatch. All the mothers are supposed to be taken back into the wild with 10% of the babies. But as to whether that happens, I have no idea. There are question marks there.
I wanted to learn exactly how these pythons were being collected from the wild. So Edith pointed me in the direction of a known nearby community of hunters.
How are you? Yeah, good to meet you. So this is your home?
Yeah.
It's like a small zoo.
Yeah.
So many animals.
Plenty animals.
I'm trying to count the species here. You can see horse, camel, cows, dogs, goats. Is that a lizard in the cage?
Yeah, lizard.
What other animals do you catch when you're hunting?
Any animal.
Oh.
Baby lag, hyena.
They're civets.
They're not grown yet.
How did you catch these?
We go hunting, then we see them, like their mother. Then their mother want to run, then we shoot up. Then we catch the babies.
So you killed the mother, and then you got the babies. And what about ball pythons?
When we are going to the bush, we have a group we are going. So when we go to the bush inside, maybe everybody they pass away, use dog to go.
And how many people?
Sometimes we go 15 people, sometimes 5, sometimes we do about 100 people.
Seeing the amount of hunters and the amount of dogs there are, you've got to wonder how any wildlife actually stands a chance.
Hunt the animals because of the python, only the python will do. They hunt the bush animals.
Well, this is definitely not what I was expecting so far. We're in the middle of what seems like a housing estate and a plantation. I don't know whether we're going to head out more over there into which looks like more forested area.
But when we see the python, then small people, some go in then catch them.
Can you tell what it is from the smell?
Yeah, you can tell.
Oh, it's gone this way. So now we're going to follow it and see if they find the snake. Okay, so that's its tracks right there. I know it's in the burrow. That's definitely a ball python.
In stark contrast to what I had witnessed back in the Everglades, this was far from selective hunting to help the environment. The pursuit of a python was causing considerable collateral damage.
The guys are primarily looking for ball pythons. They said that they will also catch whatever they can come across, whether it's antelope or pangolin, pretty much any other animals. And then they can sell the ball pythons for as much as $1,000 per animal.
With the hunting party continuing on, my next step was to find out exactly where the newly extracted animals were being sold to. Meeting up again with Edith, she had some fresh information on the python ranches. Sharing imagery from inside revealed the true picture of these animals' holding facilities. When it comes to disease transmission, keeping live animals in such close quarters is a dangerous game to play. Could these ranchers really be supplying pythons to the USA and also to the rest of the world? Heading to the outskirts of the city, I went to meet up with the only rancher who was willing to speak to me.
How many ball pythons do you have at the moment?
4. 3 pregnant ones and 1 male.
What do you do when they've laid the eggs?
We put them together and incubate them.
And then when they've hatched?
Then we ship the babies out. It goes to UK, goes to America, Europe.
And how many snakes might you get then when it's breeding season?
If you're able to collect a total of, let's say, 500 of this, then you're looking at 3,000, 3,500 babies. In the past, we knew that these ball pythons, their mutations were very expensive when they were coming out of first. But now they have bred. They have bred different kinds of mutations that can even not be found in the wild. Once in the wild, you come across the same ball python, but a white color, cystic. In the past, those ones were very expensive because once it's originated from the wild, they assume that the genes are strong to produce the same kind.
So if you came across a snake with a really interesting mutation, what would you do?
You just show it to your customer. If he's interested, you sell it to us.
Can you tell me how much they might be worth?
I know in the past, some of them were over $1,000 per head.
And if you sell them to someone, say for example in America, do you then worry that they might not take care of your animal in the same way that you might?
We know that most of them go into pets, the pet trade. Okay, and if you follow the pet trade on the internet, you see how people really also admire it. Normally, when you make a shipment and maybe you ship about 1,000 ball pythons, they will call those experts in America to come and handpick the best ones. Importers, they come down and they come and handpick in your hatcheries. They'll be selecting. And then they just say, oh, they want this for a special project.
I couldn't work it out. With such a large breeding stock domestically in the USA, why go through all the trouble of sourcing animals from Africa at all? What value did these African snakes have that made them so desirable over their captive bred counterparts? There was one person I knew who might be able to answer this. Arriving into London, I went to meet with exotic pet veterinarian Dr. Sean McCormack in the hope he'd be able to answer one crucial question. Why are snakes from Africa still being traded around the world?
So in ball pythons in particular, we've seen a massive boom in people keeping them and tinkering with their genetics and breeding them for the latest colour morph or the latest rare pattern, or breeding different types together to produce an even more rare form. I think a lot of that is driven not by fascination or respect for the animals, but it's driven by ego and potentially fame. A lot of the genetics that give rise to the kind of latest colour morphs, the weird patterns, the wonderful new kind of dazzling array of types is due to trade in wild ball pythons in Africa. One of the hidden problems within this industry is that there's collateral damage around breeding the high-end specimens, which are rare and only crop up occasionally. You're ultimately producing a massive surplus of normal stock or low-value stock animals. You also get a level of genetic health problems related to inbreeding or breeding closely related animals together, because if you discover a rare gene in a wild origin ball python and you want to propagate that, maybe even inbreed to the point that you're mating sibling with sibling or parent with offspring in order to fix that genetic mutation within the population. The snakes hatching from those kind of closely related matings crop up with physical mutations like a kinked spine or no eyes, or a severe mutation that we can see and that is visible.
And do you think that ball python breeders, are these bad people?
And I wouldn't say that everyone who breeds a pet reptile is, a bad person. I bred corn snakes and leopard geckos as a teenager. I think the problem arises where they become such a commodity that their welfare standards, their husbandry standards start to slip into a level that can only be described as factory farming. That has almost become held up as the pinnacle of reptile keeping, but I think that the bad people, to use a crude phrase, have too much influence and are spreading too many falsehoods about what reptiles really need in captivity. And let's not beat around the bush. They are doing that because they run a business, and that system is economical and it generates the most profit.
Do you think that ball pythons make suitable pets?
Do you say that a snake that someone can keep very well and provide for and allow to display its natural behaviours if it's kept correctly shouldn't be kept because it's not domesticated? Do you draw the line at tropical fish? Do you draw the line at snails, stick insects? So there's a sliding scale there, and I think we could talk about the ethical and welfare issues of keeping any animal in captivity, but I think the clincher for the ball python trade is that there's this massive hidden cost of chasing that rare genetic morph that most keepers don't even know about.
It was now clear our desire to own a pet python was blinding us to the reality in which these animals exist.
There's very few animals on the planet that seem to divide people like snakes do. And they've gone from being seen as these mythical creatures to one that is essentially the latest fashion accessory on the exotic pet scene. And to meet the demand, they're either being ripped from the wild or they're being bred in people's houses to create different morphs. And yes, they might look cool or unusual, but at what cost to the animal?